Hi, I'm Greg Gutfeld, along with Judge Jeanine Pirro, Richard Fowler, Jesse Waters, and Bill Hemmer carries her to work in a fanny pack. Dana Perino, the 5.
I like this.
Make no mistake about it. I'm here because of crooked Joe Biden. The worst president in the history of our country is destroying our country. This country is being destroyed rapidly, not slowly, rapidly. On the borders, on energy, on inflation, on everything you can name. Afghanistan removal, everything about what he's done. He's destroying our country. And he's also destroying it with weaponization. And this is purely his weaponization.
That was Trump earlier today. The court is taking a 20-minute break, and we'll see if he steps up to the mic again. The prosecution's still making closing arguments as the hush money trial gets ready for its climax. Despite 6 weeks, 22 witnesses, and tawdry testimony about spankings, America is still no closer to knowing what Donald Trump did wrong, except pay a scummy lawyer who stole 60 grand from him. The ex-president's lawyer, Todd Blanche, arguing there was no intent to defraud and no conspiracy to influence the 2016 election. And as for Bragg's star witness, Blanche saying, quote, Michael Cohen is the gloat. He is the greatest liar of all time. You cannot send someone to prison based upon the words of Michael Cohen. The judge not happy about that last line, telling jurors to ignore the suggestion that the former president could be sent to prison if convicted. The prosecution was busy trying to clean up Cohen's theft and serial lying by saying, quote, we didn't pick Michael Cohen, Trump did. But this CNN lawyer thinks they fell way short.
They fell way short. There is reasonable doubt all over this case. Where is Keith Schiller? Where is Alan Weisselberg? How did Michael Cohen get away with stealing $30,000? Hold a pity party for him. Made $4 million on this. Thought he'd be chief of staff. He's a fixer. If the plumber comes to my house to fix my leak, I could be home. That doesn't mean I know how he's doing it and what it's taking to be fixed. It's simply about, did the former president know that books, his records, false entries, for legal fees, Michael Cohen was his lawyer. Did he intend to cover up the election or to protect his family? It's everywhere.
Everywhere. So, Judge, what do you make of the judge flipping out on Trump's lawyer about this, about don't send Trump to jail, as if on the spectrum of all the stuff that's been said, that is worthy of the outrage?
First of all, we already know that Judge Merchan is thin-skinned. Okay, he can't take much. All you do is you say to a lawyer counselor, you know the sentencing is for the court. You argue the facts. I'll tell him the law, and I'll decide if there needs to be what a sentencing should be. But, you know, that's not the least of it. Today in the courtroom, and I was there today, and the amazing part of this is I thought the defense gave an excellent summation. Was it a summation that I would have given? No, I'm more, you know, kind of fire and brimstone. But
Really?
no, yeah, plus it was usually homicide, so you can be fire and brimstone. But he was very methodical. He went point by point, and everything that every juror on that jury would question, he went over. He first started with the fact that, look, the DA hasn't met their burden of proof. They have to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt, all of you, before you can convict. And what they did was they did 3 columns: an invoice, a voucher, and a check. The invoices were sent by Cohen to accounting. The vouchers were prepared by a staffer in there, consistent with the invoice sent from Cohen, and the checks are generated based on the invoices, and then Trump signed them, as we already know from Madeleine Westerhouse in the White House. He'd be talking to people, he'd be on the phone, he wouldn't even look at them, he'd even skip a few. So then you had that, was very simple. Trump's hands, no testimony, nothing from his voice to his hands had anything to do with the checks. Now, if Trump were engaging in anything fraudulent, would he send a 1099 to Michael Cohen? Would he keep all of those records? Would he allow himself to be, you know, sabotaged by a guy that, and I'm telling you right now, Trump knew Cohen was a dirtbag. That's why he didn't take him to the White House. Trump knew what he was. He used him for certain things. Now, an NDA DA is not illegal. Catch and kill is not illegal. McDougal didn't want to catch and kill. She wanted her pretty face on the cover of a magazine. The doorman, Pecker said, I'm going to write his story whether, if it's true that there's a baby out there. And of course it's not. And there's no catch and kill with Stormy Daniels because the story was out in 2011. Now, here's something that no one's talked about. Stormy Daniels did not testify in the grand jury. Why? Why did the prosecutor not put Stormy in the grand jury? Is he aware that he might be suborning perjury? Was there something in there? Was he worried about exculpatory evidence coming out? That's a very key issue. I don't know the answer to it. And finally, he came out and he issued 10 reasons, 1 through 10. Every juror had to relate to this. There was no intent to unlawfully influence the election. Trump's wife, and he established that everything that Cohen said was true, that the prosecution is now saying is corroborated, which is nonsense, is contradicted by the facts or contradicted by no one who was called. The prosecutor had the right to call Keith Schiller, who we should have called about the October 24, 2016 14-year-old. The prosecution had the right to call Weisselberg, and he didn't do it. He's within his control, and it's a material and relevant information. That Michael Cohen is the greatest liar of all time. He is the embodiment of reasonable doubt. Now, I'm not going to take up all the time, but I can tell you this. One more thing. This guy is the linchpin of the case, and they destroyed Michael Cohen.
So, Dana, it seems like to me that the prosecution wasn't trying to prove a crime. So that leads me with two theories. One, that they knew that this was a time waster to handicap Trump's campaign, or they know the guilty verdict is in the bag with the judge and the jury. What?
I mean, I think those are two good things. I mean, it is just baffling we have really great legal analysts on this channel and other places saying, wait, what is the crime? And you have to imagine that the jury is thinking that too. I think that the best line of the day is the gloat. It sticks with you. The greatest liar of all time. You're not going to forget that. It's like sticks in. It's like funny, and it's clever and it's smart. I do believe that the long summation by the prosecutor is probably driving the jury crazy. Like, dude, shut up. We already heard all of this. Let's get going. So I don't think long and tedious is the right way to go with a jury that's already ready to get back to work or end their lives.
Did you hear that, Jesse? Anyway, go ahead.
Two kind of political points. One is about the fairness for President Trump as the, let's say, former president, yes, candidate, and has a gag order. And how is it fair then that, and we'll talk about this in the next block, I know, but all of a sudden today, the Biden campaign decides to come up and demand a conviction outside of the courthouse? What were they thinking? And then we'll get to Robert De Niro later. The last thing I would mention is a lot of polls have asked, and the Democrats have hung their hats on this, if Trump is convicted, then you'll not vote for him, right? And they're not getting the answer that they want. There's not been a lot of polling with this question, which is, if he's acquitted, will that change your mind? And we don't know that answer yet, but I have a feeling that you'd probably have more than not say, yeah, that was wrong.
What say you, Jesse?
Well, I'm with Dana. It's not just they're back, the jury, after a Memorial Day weekend. They haven't been doing anything for 6 days. They are zonked. All they've been doing is partying. So they get up this morning and they're pretty zoned in to Todd Blanche. They're ready. And then he goes 2.5 hours. This guy's going to go 4.5, 5 hours in closing argument. Oh, my God. They are dying, feeling almost as bad as I am right now. I picked up Jesse Jr. from school today, Greg, and he's sitting in the back seat in the little chair, and he says, Dad, if a ruling party in Latin America had been losing in the polls to a populist and had then tried to put this guy in jail and trumped up charges, Anthony Blinken would have rushed to the microphones at the State Department and demanded election monitors and threatened to cut off aid. And I said, very astute observation, Jesse Jr., what are you getting at? And he said, well, I don't know. It just seems like such a grave injustice what's going on down there in Lower Manhattan. I'm awaiting the UN General Assembly vote to condemn what's happening here in the United States. I said, wow. And then all of a sudden he just spits out all of this Pepperidge Farm fish. Couldn't believe it.
Wow.
But if this kid who's 3 can understand the concept of justice, the whole country can. Right now you have a case. The Democrat Party is trying to charge the Republican nominee in a Democrat stronghold in an election in which they're losing on a crime that no one can name, that no one's ever charged because it isn't a crime. And they're using a porn star and a disbarred lawyer to do it. And then the judge who's presiding all over it, he donated to the Biden campaign, and the Biden campaign paid his family. And he sustains every single objection from the prosecution and overrules every single objection from the defense. This case is garbage. I'm just as sick of it as this jury, and I am praying, and I go like this when I pray, that this case is adjudicated honorably.
Well put there. And who knew Jesse's the smarter one in the family? So, Richard, I get the sense from all this that the prosecution is saying it doesn't really matter if Trump is guilty because he's such a bad guy. Just go on the bad guy argument and we're good. What say you?
I mean, listen, I don't know about that. Listen, I said last week, and I'll say it again here, I think that this jury is likely going to acquit the president because, to Dana's point, I think there's a struggle around what the actual crime is. I think we do understand the storyline. I think those of us who are watching this every day, we've even lost that in this process. This case started out because there's an alleged affair between Donald Trump and a former porn star. He gets his lawyer, Michael Cohen, who does his dirty work to pay off this porn star so the story doesn't go public. And that is the basis of the storyline. I think even some of that has been lost in the melee of the past 6 weeks. But ultimately, and I'll continue to say this, and I'll say it until this record, I'll be a broken record on this particular point. There are no cameras in this courtroom. So this is unlike one of the a rare trial in America for the media, right? We don't get to watch it and, analyze body language and analyze pregnant pauses and analyze the fire and brimstone of a closing that Judge Janine would give if she was sitting there to give it. But this is all based on legal analysis and the sort of sidebar thing that people are seeing on their screens. And we really don't know what the jury's picking up on and what they're not picking up on. So we have to depend on these 12 individuals. 2 of them are lawyers, barred here in the state of New York, to make this determination. And, I agree with the judge. I think juries try to get it right, and I think they'll try to get it right here.
Especially when they've been hanging out for 5 days with their relatives.
Can I say one thing real fast? The judge said we could go to 4:30 today, or we can go through. The jury said we want to continue to hear the summations. That tells me they're ready to roll. They've had enough of this nonsense. And they've been free since last Tuesday. So it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah. Memorial Day hangover.
Yeah, it's quite a hangover. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.